Welcome to the Business Spotlight Series. My name is Mark McNulty, and I am president of Action Coach Bluegrass. And today I have with me Dr. Elijah Jensen, who is the founder and CEO of BlackBox Energy Systems. Hello, Elijah.
Hey, Mark, it's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks. So today we're going to be talking about Elijah's business, his journey to business ownership, challenges, best practices, and share a peek into the life of what it's really like to be an entrepreneur and business owner. If this is your first time on the channel, please be sure to go ahead and like and subscribe so you get notifications when future interviews get dropped. So Elijah, welcome again and thanks for being here today. So tell us a little bit about your background and your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So, traditionally speaking, educationally, I have a PhD in physics. I also have a background in electrical engineering. I've been doing some kind of applied science or engineering for a long time now. And more business wise, I've been usually doing a consulting business or some kind of a service business basically since I was 16. Something like that. But recently, about 5 years ago, I founded a company called BlackBox Energy Systems, and we are working on highly efficient motors and generators and motor technology, trying to increase the robustness of our energy economy as well as the efficiency.
Okay, all right, awesome. So tell me about your team. You've got some full-time, some part-time partners and team members?
Yeah, absolutely. My business partner, Amy Womble, and I actually met at a University of Louisville event called Launch It.
Mhm.
We went through that program. I don't know if I would consider it an accelerator, but it teaches you a lot about business. And so we actually met there and decided that we would create a company surrounding this together. I also have a few other people that have come together, very skilled engineers and some business people in sales, etc., that we work together. Most of us at this point still have other things we're doing, but it's very quickly becoming more and more apparent that this will be a full time thing, which I'm excited about.
Awesome. So who's going to be your market? Who's going to be your primary market? Obviously, highly efficient motors, lots of markets, but who's your initial primary market that you want to bring your technology to?
Yeah, I like to say that the statistics say that 50% of the electricity used in the United States goes to a motor in some way,
Mhm.
right? So there are fans, there are pumps, there are compressor motors in your HVAC systems, etc. And all of these things are amount to about 50% of the energy that we use. So in our case, I think it's about 33% of that is in HVAC systems in particular.
Okay.
And recently, people have been trying to find ways of making these systems more efficient because, of course, it's a large energy drain. So, how can we make these systems more efficient? Well, one of the ways is to vary the speeds. They're called variable speed fans. However, the traditional induction motor isn't very efficient at varying loads or varying speeds. And so that's our main target market with the motors is essentially anything where it has to vary and these newer technologies are basically required to vary. And
Right.
so HVAC is probably our largest market.
Okay. So there's a lot of people trying to figure this out, right? So without giving away any secrets, what's going to make your company the most attractive in the marketplace?
Yeah. We are trying to balance efficiency and cost.
Okay.
There's some newer technologies out there. They're called PCB stators. And without getting too technical about it, they basically use a PCB, a printed circuit board, as
Mhm.
their stator in their motors. And it's a very interesting and innovative technology. We like to say we're a hybrid PCB stator. We're trying to make that a little bit more energy dense as well as cost effective. And so we have a patent on the stator itself and the motor itself, but we also have ways of producing the hardware that are they're very cost effective. So we can help companies take an existing design that they might have as a induction motor based design or some other thing, and easily integrate something that's it's going to be a little more expensive, but it's still not that much more expensive than what they're doing right now. So they can get a lot of benefit for not much added cost.
Okay. All right. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your journey from scientist, physicist to, hey, we're going to start a business. And what have been some of the challenges of going through? You did launch it, so that, you got some education a little bit. But what have been some of the challenges along the way of, turning an idea into a business idea, which are two different things, right?
Absolutely. I've been doing product development type consulting for a while through my consulting company. And so building a product was nothing new to me. However, building the business around that product, that is, as you said, it's a different skill set, it's a different idea. And I guess the biggest challenge that I've had to face is learning how to fundraise. I had never done it before. It's a completely different thought process. You've got to understand, what are investors looking for? How are things typically done? There's a lot of legal things that go into it. Thankfully, I actually like law a bit, so I found it fun to learn this, but it's still a very large learning process, and I'm still, I'm not there yet. I mean, I don't think I'll ever feel like I've accomplished that 100%, but it's been a great learning experience on sort of that aspect of doing a startup business.
Mhm. What's a learning or takeaway or two that you could share with other people who are going to be going down this road needing to raise capital? That's a common thing. Any things you've learned along the way that you'd pass along to the next entrepreneur?
Well, to be honest, I think that one of the big things is if you can find a mentor
Mhm.
that has done it before, that has been through that can kind of help you out, that goes a long way. I have a friend who has helped me a lot in understanding how this system works, because he's gone through this with 4 or 5 different companies. And so it really helped. And that was a little different than going to an investor and asking their opinion, because if you go to an investor and ask their opinion, they're not exactly going to be in the right frame of mind to say, hey, don't do it this way. That's not what other people want to see, that kind of thing. They're not necessarily going to do that. And the other thing is, Kentucky in particular, we have a great relationship with the Department of Economic Development, the Cabinet for Economic Development,
Mhm.
as well as we're out in Eastern Kentucky. So we have a good relationship with SOAR, which is shaping our Appalachian region.
Okay.
And they have a lot of tools for entrepreneurs that are completely free, and they'll help you through some of these processes. So they've been really great to work with as well.
Okay. What was like the biggest surprise or unexpected thing about trying to, fundraise versus what you thought it would be like?
Well, being a tech company, we're probably in a little bit of a different situation than some other businesses. I think that it's very market driven. So if you're in the middle of the country like we are, most of the investors are very conservative from the perspective of, they like to invest in things that will get a good cash flow fairly quickly. Technology is just not going to do that. Where if you're in R&D, that's not gonna, it just doesn't happen. And so, that's one of the takeaways. If you're on the coasts, I think it's a little bit easier to raise technology capital. But then again, you give away a lot of the company doing that, right? So there are pros and cons to each individual thing. I think that for us, we worked really hard, and we got a Navy contract, and that basically allowed us to do a lot of R&D, and then we got some follow-on grant money to help commercialize that R&D technology. And that helped us to the point where now investors can look at us and say, oh, okay, you're at the point where you're now interesting and de-risked enough for them to take it on.
Okay. So how have you grown as a business owner from just an inventor, product developer to really starting to lead a business? What are some of the things you personally have had to grow and learn and maybe shift your focus and attention?
Personally, it's learning how to delegate, because when you're leading an engineering team, you can take on a lot of tasks. When you're leading an engineering team and also trying to fundraise and also trying to figure out how you're going to do sales and marketing and which events you have to go to and set up for and all these things at the same time, that's when it becomes really necessary to build a really good team and
Mhm.
trust your team. And I trust our team 100%. We have really good people. And at the same time, I've had to learn to say, you know what? I could design that printed circuit board today, but there are things in the business that are more important. So I'm going to let that go until tomorrow when somebody else, one of our engineers, is going to do it, and it'll be okay. I've had to learn that over the course of the last few years, and it's become more and more efficient as we've gone. And yeah, that's one of the big ones for me, at least.
Okay. So where do you see the business going, 3 years down the road? Kind of what's your 3-year vision?
Yeah. Well, so I'll tell you, we have two main products right now. We've got motors, which can also be generators,
Right.
and we have a thing called Motor Vision. Motor Vision is a monitoring solution that can be put on any motor. In fact, Motor Vision's built into our motors just natively. However, this is a sort of an add-on that can be put on a motor. You can use it to monitor vibration and temperature, and basically you can look at bearing life and things like this to allow customers to figure out if their motor needs replacing before it catastrophically fails. And so those two main things are sort of what we're balancing as we're growing. We're growing motors, but we're also doing motor vision. And what we're doing with the vision is actually to at some point exit motor vision and sell that off to somebody, which can help us fund the rest of our products. So we're heavily focused on getting sales and marketing into selling the motor vision products, but at the same time, of course, we're doing engineering on our motors and selling those too. But that's sort of the goal. I'd say in 5 years is that we will have built that up to the point where it's very profitable. Maybe it exits right at that
Mhm.
point, and then we will be producing and licensing our motors for both OEMs as well as just sales to direct sales.
Right. Okay. Good. So tell me about kind of how you see the evolution of the team and your own roles and responsibilities as you go from part-time to full-time, as your capital raise gets and you get closer to that. So how do you see that coming together?
Yeah, exactly. We have a couple people right now that are still part-time that will be moving to full-time, which will increase our abilities to do things quicker. And as we grow that, first we're going to be, taking care of the people that we currently employ and moving them to full-time status. And we'll also be, we'll have to add more people to the team. Mostly at this point, we need sales and marketing staff,
Mhm.
right? We need people to go out and sell products. So we've been talking with a lot of outside sales representatives that are interested in this products. Most of the people we know right now, they're in this sort of area already, so they know a lot of the customers. So we're growing that as well. So basically expanding that team with essentially more business minded people than technical people. We have a good technical team right now. We're expanding the business side.
Right. So I know you're getting close to being full-time in this as it gets closer and closer to, that next stage for you. How has your role evolved, and what's the next evolution of your role? Because it's been changing from lead engineer to business. So how do you see that happening?
I think that from my perspective, well, first I'll start with a theory of mine, which is that tech company CEOs should be technologists.
Hmm.
Not everybody agrees with me on that, but I've looked at a lot of the companies that have been successful and some of the ones that haven't. And I think that it's best that that person at least have a technical background. Now, my goal is to not be doing, say, the daily engineering activities, right? And more setting vision and trying to make sure that we meet our overarching business goals. And so moving forward, I like to say I have, well, it's a startup. We all have many hats, right? I have the CEO hat, I have the CTO hat, and sometimes one of our engineers, Nathaniel, he makes fun of me because I'll say something to him that is not technical, is very business oriented. And he says, "Ah, that's the CEO hat coming on there." But that's that idea, is that so that hat's going to be put on more and more as we move forward, and eventually when we get big enough, we're going to be having a separate person for just the technology. But
Right.
my dream, if you will, is to be saying, hey, what if we tried this? There's a market for it. People want this particular thing in, add to our motors, and still oversee that from the technical aspect, but just not in sort of the everyday, just setting that vision and goal.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. All right. So covered a lot of ground there, and it's really exciting to hear about what you're doing. Efficient motors, efficient use of energy is such a growing need. It's always been an industry, but it's never been as critical as population grows, and we need to manage our use of electricity and other energy resources. And as a former engineer, I think it's pretty cool. So last few questions here, just to share kind of your business owner entrepreneur thoughts. So what has been your key to success so far?
Willingness to learn
Okay.
and perseverance. I don't necessarily think you have to be a genius to succeed at business, but you have to have the willingness to never give up, even when the going gets tough, because it's gonna get tough, right? I mean, there's always something that's gonna happen that you have to figure out. And my mindset, as an inventor, an engineer, business owner, it doesn't matter. It's always okay, that didn't work. Why? And how do we fix it? And so that can be applied to engineering, but it can also be applied to the business. Oh, okay. Well, that marketing strategy didn't work. Why? Let's figure out something that does. And so I think that's the key, is perseverance, but also being willing to say, you know what, I was wrong about that. Let's learn from it and move on.
Okay. Awesome. So what is one piece of advice you would give to other entrepreneur startups?
This is more of a legal thing, but if you're interested in raising money, don't start your company as an LLC. Start it as a C Corp from the very beginning. We started as an LLC, and it has led to, it's not a big deal, but it has led to some interesting conversations with investors about how is this going to work? How's that going to work? And so that's one main thing. And then the second thing I would say is allocate more time than you think to fundraising. It's going to take way more time than you think it is.
Okay.
So,
All right. Good advice. Yeah. Get an attorney involved at the start if you're planning to fundraise, so that you're structured appropriately for what investors are looking for. Is that
yeah. Luckily, we did have a good attorney that set our LLC up to the point where it was better. It's very easy for us to change a C Corp, which we're in the process of doing. But from my perspective, I was just like, yeah, it would have been easier if we just just started from C Corp and not had to worry about transferring it.
All right, good. So what's a book you're reading or listening to now or recently that you would recommend to other startups in particular?
You know, there's a book that our co-founder Amy Womble likes a lot, which is called Loon Shots. It's all
Okay.
about basically crazy ideas that
Mhm.
become really important and very profitable. I mean, and I've also read, which I don't agree with all of the stuff in the lean startup literature, but that's also good for if you're just starting out and you want to
Mhm.
look at how do I be efficient at this, that the lean startup stuff is good.
Okay, excellent. So second and last question here. If you had to choose one area of your business me to wave my magic wand over and improve tomorrow, which area of your business would you want that to be?
Can I say capital raising?
Sure. Money's important, right? You
I
can't.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that we've struggled the most with, um, and of course sales, and we're of course on a trajectory to get better with that. But those are the two things: it's revenue generation and raising capital.
Okay, awesome. All right. So before I ask my last question, where can people find more out about your product and whether it's a good fit for them?
Yeah, we have a website called TruVolt.tech, and that's TruVolt.tech. And that has our motors as well as motor vision on it. The company name is BlackBox Energy Systems. So we also have blackboxenergysystems.com. But for the products, it's TruVolt.tech.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. We'll make sure we get that out to everybody as well. So last question of the day here, Elijah. So what inspires you the most right now?
You know, every day we are doing something that makes me very excited, whether it's some engineering advance or we're talking to a new potential customer or anything like this. And I'm really inspired by the dedication, I'd say, of our team and how much ownership everybody has taken with it. I think that everybody that is working on this really believes in the product, really believes in the vision. And I mean, I couldn't do it without them. So that's very inspiring.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate it. All right, so this has been Dr. Elijah Jensen, who is the founder CEO of BlackBox Energy Systems. Go out to their website, TruVolt.tech, to learn more about their products and how they can help you with your business, or reach out to him, and I'm sure he'll be happy to chat with you and help you figure that out. Thank you so much, Elijah. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing your thoughts and sharing a little bit about your journey, and especially sharing what it's been like to go from inventor to fundraiser to business owner and some of the challenges that have come along with that and little tips for people. There's a lot of people out there, looking to do the same thing. So thank you so much for sharing. Really appreciate having you with us today.
It was great to be here, and thank you for having me on.
All right, so listeners, thank you so much. Listen to this one a couple times, especially if you're thinking about fundraising or you're in the tech space. A lot of tips there and a lot of things to think about that you might not be realizing. You can maybe save yourself some time and money if you go ahead and learn from what Elijah shared. So appreciate all of you for listening, and be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next upcoming interview. Bye for now.